Okay, this video is going to be on solving literal equations. So literal equations is just another way to say that we are going to rearrange formulas. That's basically what we are doing. We're taking equations that only have letters, and we are moving those letters around. So you solve, one thing to note is that you solve literal equations exactly like a regular equations. So we solve literal equations just like linear equations. Okay? So think about the other day when we did solving inequalities. Even though it did not have an equal sign, we still used the same properties and moved things the same way as if it were an equal sign. So that's what we're going to do here. So we have this chart. So the first thing you need to do is figure out which variable, which letter you are needing to isolate. Meaning, what letter are you going to get by itself? Next thing is you have to figure out how to get all other letters moved to the other side of the equal sign, and then apply that. So if we jump right in, the number one has y equals mx plus b, which is our slope-intercept formula. So we have to solve for b. So that means that if b is what I need to get by itself, I need to take mx and I need to move it to the same side as y. So right now mx and b are added together. So I can, in order to undo that, we can subtract mx from both sides. So just like if we were subtracting a number, it's going to cancel on the right. And then with our letters, since they don't have common factors, we're not actually going to simplify anything. We just rewrite what we have. So we literally have y minus mx. And then since we canceled our mx on the right side, all we're left with is b, and then we've achieved the goal because we now have b isolated to one side by itself. Okay? So let's kind of look at some numbers. So for number 2, we are solving for y, so I need to move the 8x and the 4. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 8x from both sides. It's going to cancel here, and I'm left with 4y. And then we can't combine the 12 or the 8x because they are not like terms. 12 is a constant, and then 8x has a variable with it. To get y by itself, now all we have to do is divide everything in our equation by 4. That's going to make my 4's cancel on my y. And in this situation, we can simplify what we have because we do have numbers. So 12 divided by 4 is going to give me 3. And then negative 8 divided by 4 is going to give me a negative 2 and x. So now we have y by itself. So y is equal to 3 minus 2x. And then we're done. All right, the third one. So we're doing the same process over and over. We are just isolating one letter. So we need to get h by itself, which means I need to get pi and r squared to the other side with v. So if we think about this equation, all three of these things are smushed together, but really it's just pi times r squared times h. Remember when we have letters all together like that, it means multiplication. So if I want to undo the multiplication in order to move the pi and the rh, the opposite of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide by pi and r squared in order to get these two to cancel, and all I'm left with is h. So if we're going to divide by this on the right side, we need to do the same thing on the left. So divide by pi times r squared. So here pi's cancel, r squares cancel, and then on the left side we can't simplify this because there are no numbers. So we're going to keep it as v divided by pi r squared equals, the only thing I have left over here is this h, and that's exactly what I wanted to isolate. So then that means we are done, and you cannot simplify this anymore. All right. 4. This should look familiar because 4 is the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So we're just going to move the formula around. We're not going to plug anything in, but we are solving for B squared, which is this one right here. So I need to get this by itself, which means I have to move A squared over. So A squared and B squared are just added together. So in order to move A squared, we're going to subtract by A squared on both sides. My A squareds on the left are going to cancel, and I'm left with B squared. And then over here, I can't combine C squared and A squared because one is a C variable, one is an A variable. So we're going to rewrite it as C squared minus A squared, and then we are done because B squared is by itself. So if you see the pattern, once you get the variable by itself, you are done. And it looks weird because you can't simplify anything, but most of them are going to be that way. So number 5, we want to solve for t. So again, this is the same thing as d equals r times t. So in order to undo multiplication, we're going to divide by r because we want t by itself. So I'm going to divide the right side by r. My r's on the right cancel. I can't simplify this because it's two different letters, so this is going to stay as d divided by r equals, I'm left with t on the right, which is exactly what we wanted. Okay? The last one, we have a fraction is in our formula, so it is basically the same thing. We're going to solve this for m. I've left that off, sorry. So d equals m divided by v, which means I need to move v. So right now it's dividing m, so the opposite would be to multiply. So I'm going to multiply both sides by v. Sorry, the lights went out. Okay, we're going to divide multiply both sides by v. That's going to make our volume. Our v's cancel on the right. V times d is the same thing as v d, or you can leave it with the multiplication symbol. And then all we are left with is this m on the right side, and then we are done. So you are just rearranging your letters using the same properties as regular equations, and get in the habit of when you solve literal equations that 9 times out of 10 you're not going to be able to simplify what you have because they're not common, they're not like terms. They don't share anything, okay?